in it with prayer. I'm in it with love. I'm in it with affection. I'm in it with keeping no record of wrong. And I'm in it not looking for what he's giving me, but for what I'm giving him.
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We are doing a little nighttime recording here in Phoenix. That's why we got that dark backdrop behind us, in case you're wondering. Have an inquiring mind, but we are here to have a recap episode of Rachel and Tony Houck. And man, they were so much fun to talk to. He is a pastor. She is an author. And Kim, what was the first thing or what hit you about this couple when we were talking to them?
I love that interview. They were a really sweet couple. And when we talked to them in the very beginning and asked them about what makes them kick ass, they said it's really simple. We're both just so busy following God, Jesus, that everything else just comes pretty easy. It's the simplicity of just that idea of following a higher power and being grounded in spirituality that has made it an easy walk for them.
And it's interesting, some couples that we've talked to have been really strong on that pillar of faith and moral code. Others haven't mentioned it. But I think, they came right out of the chute saying, this is our number one focus. It defines who we are. It defines our relationship. So it's interesting to see that thread go all the way through the entire interview. So if you want to hear or listen about a couple who faith and moral code is the foundation of their lives, of their relationship, and they really walk that talk, and it's simple. I think Tony said, hey, we're both pursuing Jesus, and that's our focus, and therefore it really is the defining piece of our relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
What was your next big takeaway from this couple, Kim, as we kind of walk through and started talking about their history and what love looked like to them growing up?
Yeah, they, I think, both came from similar backgrounds. I would say Rachel grew up in a situation where she was very blessed. She had parents who loved each other very much, and they were excellent role models for her. And one of the things that stood out to me was that they also had and modeled a very good friendship system. And so by the parents having a great friendship system, they also had a circle of friends that were amazing. I think that those children really observed and got a lot of meaningful things from those great role models.
I think that we talk about it a lot, and you are modeling not just for each other in your relationship, but there's kids watching, and you're setting a legacy. And they had that model for them by their parents, and they naturally just brought that into their own relationship. And I think, Kim, my next big takeaway was really about commitment. And I think that Rachel talked about it beautifully. She said, this relationship is the one that God gave me. And she said it was just so important to her that, she's not going to keep a record of wrong. She is in it with prayer, in it with love, and in it with affection. And I loved how she said that and set that up. I think it was just a beautiful way of framing what commitment was to her.
Yeah, she also said there's no front door, there's no back door, and there's no windows. And I love that visual of there's no escaping it. No matter what, we are in this and we are going to fight for each other. I'm in it. This is my life, is what she said.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Gottman uses the whole model of the relationship house, the sound house, and so kind of like to use that. When you think about it, you're in the house and what's it built of and on. And she said she's not looking for anything to get out. And she also, I think, talked about no threats, right? The D word doesn't even enter into any of their discussions because they would never threaten it because they would never do it. So it's not on the table. It's not part of the discussion. You're not going to hang it or hold it over anybody's head. And
Yeah, there were a lot of great quotes throughout this entire interview, but I'm going to say my most favorite was I'm in it with prayer, I'm in it with love, I'm in it with affection, I'm in it with keeping no record of wrong, and I'm in it not looking for what he's giving me, but for what I'm giving him. I'm in it 100%, and I love that. I think that she is got all the right ideas going on there.
yeah, and she said,
All the right thoughts.
she said, if I ever have an issue, I'm going to talk about it with him. I'm not going to talk about it with somebody else. I mean, she may need help and that's a natural thing. But she said, anything that I need or have, if I have an issue, if I'm concerned about him, I'm going straight to him and I'm going to bring it to him and have that conversation, in a loving way. They got married kind of like us, a little bit older. We were 28. They were 31. So they each had a little bit of life experience under their belt. And I think that had an influence. And, one thing I really liked, Kim, is that she talked about one of her first jobs and working in advertising. She said she was blown away how a lot of the women would talk about their husbands and talk badly about them. Oh, what did he do now? And she said, I never did that. I was incredibly careful that I only spoke about him in a loving and supporting way. And so I think that's kind of an important thing is what kind of picture are you painting of your spouse to others? That's really commitment too, because you got to be committed that when they're not around, how are you representing them? And, it's easy to find fault and it's easy to nitpick and pull those things out you don't like and maybe chime in and heap on. But she said, I am not going to do that to him. I'm going to honor him when we're not there. And I think that you're painting a masterpiece of your spouse to others. I would hope it's a masterpiece and you don't want to paint a train wreck.
Sure.
And you have to be faithful how you talk about them to others.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about communication because that's always a big one for us and one of the 3 C's. And I feel like as far as communication goes with Rachel and Tony, they're sort of typical of a lot of couples in that he's very analytical. He wants to always try to fix things and make things right. And so a lot of times when she'd be communicating with him, he was always offering a solution or a suggestion rather than just really practicing active listening. And I think that's a common thread that we've found with a lot of couples. And so he finally learned after a little while that he would just be really quiet and listen. And then she would look at him and say, "What's wrong? What's going on?" I think the first couple times that he actually did this, she was wondering what was happening. And he said, "Well, I'm just wondering, should I say something or am I just listening right now?" And that's a really great question when it comes down to it. Maybe that's what you need to ask is, do you want me to try to offer you a solution right now? Or do you want me to just be here and hold your hand and listen?
Yeah, I think it's good to know how do you need to show up for your spouse in the moment. And
because it could be different each time.
Oh yeah, or it changes. It's not always, you can't always hit the same drum, the same note, the same tune, because they don't always need the same thing. And I think asking that clarifying question, what do you need from me in this moment right now? I need you to just listen. And guys, if you don't know the answer to this already, if you haven't had the experience, 9 out of 10 times, women want you to listen. They want a sounding board. They want to be heard. They want to share. Men may be the same way, but much more so for women. they're not inviting you to come solve their problems. They're inviting you in to connect and understand where they're coming from and what they're thinking.
When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder what you could be doing better? Have you ever thought how helpful it would be to be a part of a like-minded community of other imperfect couples who want to level up in their number one relationship? Come visit Kickass Couples Nation, where you can talk with people just like you who are looking for ways to invest in and increase their joy, commitment, and fulfillment in their most important human relationship. You'll have access to a team of licensed marriage therapists, coaches, articles, podcasts, live webinars, and more. Just visit MatthewPHoffman.com so you can learn more about a community that's ready to help you level up. That's MatthewPHoffman.com so you can become of the growing Kick-Ass Couples Nation right now.
And it's, Tony talked about intentionality, right, with communication. When we communicate, we do have to do things that are practical, right? What time are we having dinner? Where are we going on this day? Who's got the kids today, right? So a lot of communication can have those things where we need to communicate information, but really intentionality is important because what are you desiring to achieve with your communication? It can't always be just about the necessary things, right, Kim?
Yeah, there has to be
got to be deeper.
Intentionality and time to set aside to really be intentional about what you're saying to each other and what you're talking about. And maybe you're talking about feelings. Maybe you're talking about hopes and dreams. Maybe you have a family member that you're discussing. But I think we have to also set aside that time, and that time needs to be an appropriate time for both parties. It can't just be one-sided. I'm ready to talk to you now, and the other person may be tired. We talk about being tired and hungry, and there are, some feelings that our other or that our partner may be experiencing that it's not a good time for them to have an intentional conversation.
Yeah, communication has to be about vulnerability sometimes. Rachel said, there's communication that you need to know my heart and I need to know yours. And that means, how are you feeling in the moment? How are you feeling about an issue, or what's going on emotionally and mentally with you right now? And when you communicate that way from your heart, you're being vulnerable, and that vulnerability allows for intimate connection and attachment. And so if you think about your communication, what percentage of it is the perfunctory stuff? Hey, it's the details, it's the logistics, and how much of it is that deep, intimate, where you're allowing the connections to occur with your spouse? And I love, there was a great example in that they shared, Rachel and Tony, they talked about, they had the house that they live in was kind of a gift. They got it at a very low price, and they're able to retire the debt on it and really not have a mortgage. And that, what a blessing, they said that was. And there was a time where Tony felt that there was someone that owed them money. And he communicated his heart to her by saying, you know what? We're blessed to be living where we're living now. And I would really like to forgive the debt that is owed to us, because I feel we were given a blessing, and I think we have an opportunity to be a blessing to somebody else. But if he didn't have that communication about where he was in his heart, and he just said, hey, I want to, make this financial decision without you, it wouldn't have made sense to her. And I think that he was open and vulnerable about that, and commit. And so he was communicating his heart, and it totally made sense to her. And they're able to bless somebody else in that way.
Yeah, that's a great example. How about conflict resolution? I feel they really approach that in a great way. He said, well, conflict's a misunderstanding. And while we say that a lot as sort of a euphemism, oh, we just had a misunderstanding. He said, no, the reality is that it is a misunderstanding, because I'm saying one thing and you're actually hearing another thing. And so I think really asking questions, he said, and really getting some clarification when there's a misunderstanding is really how you can resolve things pretty easily.
And I think it's important. He said, I think Tony said, you got to make sure when you're working through conflict that you're asking questions more than you're making statements. If you say, I said, you did, right? If you're making absolute statements, then you're really taking a position And you're
Yeah.
setting yourself up for there to be more conflict
Sure.
because I'm defending a position or you're defending a position. But when you're asking a question and
Mhm.
seeking to understand, I think he made the comment is, okay, I said this. What did you hear? Because
Mhm.
what we say and what our partner hears are not always the same thing. So asking those clarifying questions, this is what I meant when I said this. And then your partner, oh, that's not what I heard. You said this, right? And so we each think we have a really clear idea of what was said or what was exchanged, but we're not always on the same page. So I think we've got to ask those clarifying questions and make sure that what we said is what they heard or what they received. Otherwise,
Mm.
assumptions are dangerous. And I think that's really important, not to be making assumptions in our relationships, but getting to the bottom and figuring it out.
Yeah. And they shared another great example too when it came to having a little bit of conflict within the relationship. There was a period of time that Rachel was going through, just really in her head and in her heart, even feeling that there was something wrong in the relationship. And she was also feeling that she was coming off as being annoying to him and that he was getting irritated with her and he was unhappy with her. And all of a sudden, she had really just sort of created this story in her head that he didn't like her anymore. And then eventually, that story, she was writing this script that kept getting sort of deeper and deeper
Yeah.
in that, oh, now she's going to get a divorce. There's sort of this impending divorce that's going to happen. And so she really just wrote this whole story, made up, visual in her head, but it felt real to her.
Right.
And I think it wasn't until she stopped it, took responsibility for it, and said, I really need to have a conversation with him about this because this can't go any further.
I think, when we don't communicate and we make assumptions and we're not exchanging and we're experiencing something our spouse says or does, and we think, oh, they think this or they must mean that. We keep drawing all these conclusions, which she was doing, and she didn't get validation of them. So until she said, we're praying about this and we're going to solve this and we're going to figure this out, he had no idea that she was already down the road thinking this is huge and man, this could lead to our separation because she had created something in her mind and didn't get validation or communication about his position and his ideas and his thoughts on that issue. So in absence of confirmation or specific information, she was off to the races writing a whole new dialogue that never existed. And I think, Kim, we've all done that. We've all, your spouse says something or does something or doesn't do something or doesn't say something, and you interpret it as fact without getting validation.
Yeah. And then off you go in your head with all these crazy ideas.
Yeah, you're right. You've written a whole new story.
Yeah.
And you're
A
off a
whole
whole
new
nother
script.
thing. And, Kim, one of the other things I love that they share, we talk about the concept a lot in our interviews. One of my big takeaways of overflow thinking and how their relationship was blessing others. And Rachel talked about OPK, other people's kids. She goes, we don't have kids of our own, but we have other people's kids. And I think what she meant about that is they have kind of a ministry, right? I mean,
They do. They love youth. They love, young single adults, sort of people who might be in college or maybe they're living in the same town as they are and they don't have a lot of family members around. They just have this open door policy for other people's kids and invite them in for Christmas Day and, just whenever. And so they just have beautiful giving hearts in this way. And I loved hearing how the joy and happiness in their own relationship spills over into this ministry.
Yeah. Anybody
It's
they
really
feel,
sweet.
yeah, anybody they felt that didn't have an anchor, a place to call home,
Mhm.
they opened it up. And I think that the goodness of their relationship really overflowed quite beautifully into that little ministry of being, Opa and Oma, which are the Greek words for, kind of the grandma or the great uncles, the people that meant something and were close to them. I thought that was a beautiful demonstration of the goodness of their relationship and how it unfolded.
And I think I would close by saying a quote that Rachel gave, and that was, she said, I say family is whoever is in your heart.
Make a lot of radiant room.
And
Yeah, beautiful
yes.
example. And, we're glad to have this time with this couple. We hope you go back and check out the whole interview and see what a spirit-led relationship looks and feels like, and how they're able to come together and just beautifully sail through a lot of things because of that foundation that they have. And we also are excited because if you are listening to this and you feel you would like help or support, we've just launched a new program at Kickass Couples Nation. We have Kickass Couples Coaching, and we are here. I am there with a fantastic team of therapists, and we are coaching people who want to get back to honeymoon hot and reach their own relationship nirvana. So check us out at MatthewPHoffman.com. Learn about our coaching. We have a free call set up there if you want to learn more about how we can help you reach your own relationship nirvana. We hope you'll come check it out. And we are dedicated to helping couples get there and stay there and really experience the kind of love and fulfillment that everybody is capable and deserving of. So thanks for joining us for a recap episode today with Rachel and Tony Houck. And we hope that you remember that happily ever after does not just happen, it's on purpose.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.